Cheese on point, don't like it. Cheese on
It's
point.
very quiet, it's time for the meeting. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the City Council of Universal City, Texas. It is Tuesday, March the 1st, believe it or not, 2022. It is now 6:30 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order and call for quorum check, please.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Discuss in a moment.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Discuss in a moment.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowling.
The quorum is present. We shall proceed. The invocation this evening will be given by Councilmember Maxwell, and I'll lead us in the pledges afterwards. If everyone please stand.
Heavenly Father, on behalf of all who are gathered here tonight, we thank you. We also thank you for the many and abundant blessings. We thank you for life, for health, for the ability to be involved in useful work, and the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. We pray for our nation, and we pray for those countries that oppose our freedoms, the freedoms that we cherish. We ask you to continue to protect our first responders, military personnel worldwide, and the conflict happening overseas at this time. Amen. Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Nice audience this evening. Thank you very much for coming and joining in the process with your city council. We're very pleased to have you here this evening. The first item we need to discuss this evening is to consider the excuse of a couple of our council members. Mayor Pro Tem Neville is with a family. It's very important that we need to be with family this evening. And Councilmember Goolsby, unfortunately, has a health issue. It's not COVID, but he is not feeling well, and he thinks his presence here tonight would not be very, very good. So,
Second.
motion made by Councilmember Maxwell, second by Councilmember Shelby. Any discussion? All right, call for the vote, then, please, Chris.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowling.
That was the best thing. We missed him, obviously, but there are occasions when people just cannot make their activities. So the next item on is the presentation of certificates of appreciation to Snowfest military volunteers. And none of the airmen can make it here this evening because 99% of them have almost already PCS. They've gone permanent change of station to another location. And but we were just pleased that they did help us at our Snowfest. And I watched them in action. They were having a great time. They were having a terrific time. And what I want to do for the record, and we'll get these certificates to them. We had really special certificates for each one of them, and we'll make sure we get them to them wherever they are. But what I do want to do is recognize them by name for our record this evening. And you're going to hear there's like 30 names, but those are the wonderful young men and women that supported us at our Snowfest. Airman Basic Elias Reyna, Airman Basic Nicholas Howard, Airman Basic Ethan Muck, Airman Basic James Hansen, Airman Basic Delilah Larson, Airman Basic Christine Snyder, Airman Basic Beckham Ford, Airman Basic Olivia Torres, Airman Zevian Alves, Airman Olivia Massey, Airman Victor Cannon, Airman Carson Huber, Airman Nicholas Murray, Airman Jamie Maldonado, Airman Riley Archuleta, Airman Jordan Bear, Airman First Class Jasmine Hodge, Airman First Class Sidney Gore, Airman First Class Dominique Lucero, Airman First Class Alexandra Meeks, Airman First Class Annabeth Coronado, Airman First Class Dagoda Neiswanger, Airman First Class Isaiah Horn, Airman First Class Sir French, Airman First Class Lakeisha King, Airman First Class Kristen Pinheiro Negron, Airman First Class Matthew Stark, Airman First Class Brian Cares, Airman First Class Thomas Griskowitz, Airman First Class Dominic Zollner, Airman First Class Joshua Lewis, Raleigh Bonnet, Aiden Zuazwa, Michael Zuazwa, Tech Sergeant Joshua Swank, Tech Sergeant Tyler Fisher. And there was one individual who made it all possible, and we'll we recognize that another date, her name is Marietti. And so these are the individuals that, if you were at Snowfest and you were near the snow ride, that's where these young airmen were. And what a pleasure to have them participate with us. It shows what phenomenal support, not only do we give Randolph, but they give to us. So I just want to recognize all of them, and let's give them a round of applause. Even though it's a distinct honor to be able to have our airmen participate in functions like this. And they did it, and they had a blast. They had a blast. Okay, next item on the agenda. First of all, I'm going to pull tab number F this evening. Tab number F, and there's a couple of reasons. Number one, because two of our council members are not here. I think it's very important that we address that issue with all council members present. I think it's very important that they participate in this activity. So we pulled that tab F off this evening's agenda. I hope that doesn't disrupt anybody that is here this evening to specifically discuss that. But I think you'll understand why we've done that. All right, so we move on now to our consent agenda. But first is on tab number 8. All matters listed on this, as you can see, considered routine by council, will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. So we have items A and B. A, consider the minutes of the Tuesday, February 15th council meeting. And B, discuss and consider ordinance 655-G-2022. It's an ordinance approving a specific use permit to Wardrum Mixing Studio LLC for personal improvement services used in a C1 neighborhood services district on property located at 2060 Universal City Blvd, Suite A, Universal City, Texas, and providing for non-severability and establishing an effective date. This would be the second reading of that.
Move to approve.
Okay, Councilmember Jerry makes the motion.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Shelby. Any discussion, anyone? All right, call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowles.
The motion passes unanimously. For you in the audience, that particular location is right down past the entrance to Colorado, and it is used to be Bernard Donegan Insurance. And this organization is going to move in there. All right, so next item we have on the agenda is citizens to be heard. We do have individuals that have signed up this evening. It's considered, as you can see, to address council on issues or concerns. Must be informative only. No council action will be taken. And please, if you can, limit your comments to 3 minutes. And we do have 8 individuals that signed up this evening. So I'll call you up in order that you signed up. First individual this evening is Mr. Phil Vaughn. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Phil Vaughn, 2801 Universal City Boulevard. There's 3 things on the agenda tonight that I wanted to bring up and hope that you're going to take serious consideration of. The first one is the EDC agreement, tab B. So the city has an agreement in front of them to give $500,000 to a business that wants to rehab the Superdores building. The way I read the agreement, there's really no strings on that money. If they were to walk away in a year, then the city's out that money. So I would encourage you to ask the city what would happen if they do that, or is there any way to claw that money back? The agreement does say that it can be returned with interest. However, there's no real stipulations to require that other than not hiring illegal immigrants. The only reason to do an agreement like this is if the building is a blight on the community or no one else can use it. This is not the case. It's in an industrial park. It's not like it's the Ace Hardware on Pat Booker that they're rehabbing, which all of us would love for somebody to do something with. The other reason to do this would be if they're going to give us significant property tax or sales tax. If that's the case and they are going to do that, I would rather you see the agreement tied to the delivery of that property tax and sales tax. Generally, you would have one of these agreements where you say, we'll give you up to $500,000 by rebating you the additional property tax and sales tax that you bring in over the next 5, 10, 15 years. That makes sure that they're a long-term good corporate citizen of the city and that they're actually delivering results that help the city rather than just giving them $500,000 where the city's taking all the risk. The next thing on tab E, which is similar, there's an incentive being given to the hotel at the golf course. Interestingly enough, the agreement for this was not in the agenda packet, so we have no idea what is being given away to the hotel. There's already been some incentives given, but there's apparently more. I would encourage you, hopefully you guys have been able to see that and know what's in that agreement and what's being given to them. If it's a rebate of the hotel occupancy tax that they're gonna generate, I would be fine with that, but if it's anything else, I think we should really have some pause on that before we, or tie some performance metrics to that to make sure the city's getting something in exchange. And then the last one is the executive session you have where you're considering the land that's behind, I believe you're considering the land behind HEB, between Victory Assembly of God, HEB, and Walmart, that triangle area. That's the last best commercial developable land in Universal City. It's not clear what you're going to be discussing in executive session, but hopefully this is not going to be a gift or a sub-fair market value sale to some business without, again, some good performance metrics to recover some of that money. I'm assuming that that land is very valuable, so I hope you're taking that consideration. Thank you.
Next individual assigned this evening is Mr. Richard Edwards. Edwards.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard K. Edwards, 209 Trudy Lane. I also want to speak about the Merge Works project. The $500,000 from the UDEDC, I'm wondering what that equates to in time. In other words, how many months, years, I would assume, does it take for the Economic Development Corporation to raise $500,000? Do they currently have $500,000 on the books and liquid and available, or will this grant incur some type of indebtedness on the corporation, which through proxy would also indebt the people, as that's where they get the funding, is through a portion of sales taxes. I believe they had to submit a schedule of how many jobs they're going to be bringing to the city. If the council could ask how many of these jobs are coming to the city, how many of those jobs are open, if any, or if they'll just be moving over employees from a different facility. Lastly, there's no doubt the property encompassing the Superdor building is already responsible for annual property taxes, and I don't know what other fees. But in addition to that, what does the city estimate they will receive in as far as other taxes and fees? And at what point would that amount equate to $500,000? So in the long run, at what point would the city overall get a full return on its investment? These are questions that I think are pertinent. I would hope that they are asked here in open quorum and that direct answers are given. I think then, at least the people, I would hope y'all too, could feel confident that the Universal City Economic Development Corporation has done a good job, or that maybe it needs further consideration. Thank you very much.
Next individual assigned this evening is Ashton Bowman.
Hi, Ashton Holman, 12807 El Dorado. We've lived in Universal City for about 5 years and have owned 2 houses here. I too, like many others, am upset about the no alley trash pickup. I live on a dead-end street with 14 houses. 2 of those houses are vacant. However, I spoke to all 12 of my neighbors, most of them face-to-face, about the fact of losing the alley trash pickup. All 12 of us want and need the trash pickup in the alley. Some of my neighbors have lived on my street anywhere from 25 to 40 years. They've always had trash pickup, and to change it now seems cruel and unreasonable. I'm especially annoyed because my alley backs up to nothing. In fact, it's across from the field the city uses for events like the pumpkin patch. While I love the pumpkin patch and even hand out candy for trunk or treat every year, I'm frustrated that the road the city used is not paved. Many people drive on our alley for the pumpkin patch, even more walk it to get to city events that the city holds. Many of us think it's impractical since we live on a dead-end road. Many of us are concerned about the wear and tear the truck's going to have on the street. I'm also concerned for our elderly neighbors, 3 of whom I personally talked to and are concerned about how they're going to lug these cans up and down a driveway. While we're more than willing to help any of our neighbors who needs help pulling their trash cans in and out, we seem to be the exception to that rule. I don't feel like everyone with an alley is going to help out their elderly neighbors. I emailed the fleet operations manager who's in charge of the trucks. He actually gave me measurements for the rear loaders and the side loaders. The side loaders are actually not as wide and have a much easier time getting trash. The main concern is the alleys themselves. When the flooding occurs, they get too muddy, and them not being paved or graded or filled, the trucks get stuck inside of them. In conclusion, our street of 12 homeowners, some of who are here tonight, would all like the trash pickup to be reconsidered. While it may not greatly affect any of you on the board, it personally affects the 12 houses on our street, which I honestly believe is how many people are going to feel when it comes to their alley not being where their trash needs to be picked up. It's a huge convenience to have the trash in the alley, and it just looks nicer. On a side note, I wanted to thank Mr. Shelby for answering my email in such an amazing and professional way. I sent out several emails to city officials, not other board members, but I did send out to several city officials, and you were by far the only person who responded, gave me the facts, and actually answered all my questions. So thank you very much for that. Thank you guys for your time.
The next individual signed this evening is Mr. Nicholas.
Hi everybody, my name is Nicholas Bowman. I also live on 12807 Eldorado. As you heard, my wife just spoke about the alley trash pickup. My concern is going to be the actual alleys themselves. So we checked the city charter and talked to Michael Casada, the development director, as well as Linda with development. What we learned is that this Universal City is responsible for our alleys. I have the paper that shows it was signed and accepted by the board. I have extra copies for you guys as well, in case you want them. According to the paperwork, the alley is owned by the city. Linda informed us that even if we wanted to pave the alley or fix it ourselves, that work would not be possible. We would not be allowed to do it, as the city legally owns it. I do not understand why the alleys are not being taken care of, since it has been the responsibility of the city since the 70s when they were put in. I believe they've not been maintained for 50 plus years. So, I don't understand why they're not on the city's budget to keep them either paved or filled and graded. And since many of them started off paved, if you walk behind there, you can see patches of pavement. If the city has been doing maintenance like they should have been doing from the start, we would not be having issues with the trash trucks and the pickup. And I think that would be a new point in terms of the contract with waste management. The town charter states residents are responsible for trimming trees and mowing the grass, but the actual roads is on the city. The city should maintain them like any other property that the city owns. I'm asking the city council to put alley maintenance on the agenda when the new budget gets discussed. I don't expect them to all be repaired at once, but they should be handled from worst to best. Please put maintenance of the alleyways owned by the city on the agenda for the city budget. Thank you.
You guys want copies right now, or?
You may pass them out if you wish. Yes, that's fine.
And here's copies of what we discussed. I don't know if we have enough of actual.
Okay, we can copy.
Okay, perfect.
Maybe 2 of these.
Yeah, I think I got it.
Thank you.
Got some people expecting some more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The next individual assigned this evening is Dewana Loki.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. You may recall I spoke a couple weeks ago on my disappointment with the discontinuing the alley trash pickup. And I do agree with what a couple people in front of me said, and I just wanted to be in front of you again, just to hope that it stays on your radar and that you will see what you can do for us. I think quite a few members, there's quite a large number of people in Universal City with the alleys. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I was here 2 weeks ago, I had 5 of my elderly neighbors with me. All of them female, over 85, 4 of them widows. There was 3 more that couldn't make it due to mobility issues, and that's just in my little cluster right around me. I've talked to a lot of people, no one's happy about it. And you know, if it flat has to be that way, it has to be that way, I get it. But again, I just don't feel like we pushed back or we asked questions. What can we do? What can the citizens do? What can the city do to meet waste management halfway and possibly continue this service that we've had for years? So thank you again for your service and thank you for your time.
All right, next individual signed this evening is Mr. Bernard Rubel.
I always pick what I was saying on the way to the podium. Basically, I'd like to point out what I mentioned before, and that is root cause issues. One of the root cause issues for all the complaints about waste management is it was a sole source contract. It was a sole source contract without a statement of work for the citizens. And basically what I'd like council to consider is to place on the agenda an item that says sole source contracts, particularly for $7.8 million, okay, should only exist in the case of emergency, and that emergency approved by council. That was off the items, and I'm still picking that up. Okay. Councilman Maxwell, this is an excerpt from a letter, that email that I sent to you. Councilman Maxwell, thank you. What happened at the last council meeting was amazing. You gave the heart of the residents back to council. No matter what the result of tonight, I will remember that this is a turning point for our city. I thank you, Councilman. Now, to get to the other sort of issues that I
Remember your timing, Bernard.
Gotcha, thanks. Now to get the other sort of issues, essentially what I would like council to do, because of the problems with the management of the golf course in so many years, I would like the council to essentially put on the agenda a proposal for a town hall meeting.
That'd be nice.
Okay? And I think that would be great. Lastly, in the minute that I have left, my other favorite issue, transparency in the government. Okay? In particular, our government. Not that you're doing things wrongly legally, but for improved transparency. And this again, this is read from the state controller's website, which by the way has a whole division associated with transparency in government. Transparency. Meaningful transparency leads to greater accountability. Texans work hard to earn every tax dollar they send to the state and local governments. The Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts has established the Transparency Star program, which recognizes local governments for going above and beyond in their transparency efforts. The program recognizes government entities that establish the following: open their books not only to their traditional financials, but also in areas of contracts and procurements, economic development, public pensions, debt obligations, and provide clear and meaningful financial information, not only by posting financial documents, but also through summaries, visualization, and downloadable data and other relevant information. For further information,
You need to wrap it up.
certainly, and for further information, call, keep this on the record for council's review, 519-5676, 5676, the State Controller's Office. I thank you for your attention tonight.
The next individual signed up this evening is Mr. Stephen Buck.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Madam City Manager. Stephen Buck, I live at 8603 Phoenix Avenue. I am running for City Council for one of the 3 open seats coming up in May. I would invite everybody to look at my website, buck4uc, that's buckforUC.com. A couple of issues that I would like to address this. Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome to our new city attorney. And also, on the first day of Women's History Month, I would like to give a special shout out to all the ladies in Universal City. Thank you for everything that you have done for us and for our communities. We owe you our very existence, so thank you for everything that you do. Regarding tab B, the grant to Cindy and Scott of MergeWorks, to be clear, I absolutely support the grant of the Economic Development Corporation to that business. But as I read through the contract that was developed between the EDC and the company, there are very few conditions set for the approval of that contract. Specifically, they are required to obtain a certificate of occupancy, and they have to promise not to break the law, in the sense that they will not hire any undocumented workers. So I would hope that every single business in Universal City is obligated to not break the law. But specifically this one, there's nothing in there about they agree to hire a specific number of Universal City residents. They're going to stay in business for a certain amount of time. That if they go broke, the money is going to be repaid. I don't know. I don't know all the details of it. But in the contract that was listed on the agenda for tonight, there are very few conditions placed upon them. I would hope that City Council might review that contract and consider sending it back to the EDC for renegotiation with MergeWorks. And if there's anybody from MergeWorks in here tonight, I fully support you guys getting the grant. We just got to make sure that there is an accountability process to ensure that the conditions are met. Let's see, I was going to talk about tab F, Mr. Mayor, but you pulled that one. Regarding tab C, the PFC for Ironwood Apartments, PFCs rarely go well for the granting authority. It ends up that the private entity collects all the profits over the years, they manage the properties, and then at the end of the period agreed to, the city who has paid a significant amount of money for that PFC ends up with the facility right about the time that it's time to either significantly renovate it or tear it down. So I would urge council to not approve the PFC arrangement. And since everybody else wants to talk about it, I'll talk about the trash cans.
Yeah.
I hope that we would get a sense of community and that neighbors can help their neighbors. Find a teenager that's in your community, something like that. If this is going to be unavoidable, I have volunteered to all of my neighbors, I'll come put your trash can out on Sunday night and I'll bring it back in for you on Monday morning, right? I understand everybody's disagreement with this and I fully support that, but maybe neighbors can help out neighbors if worse comes to worse. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Mr. Council Member, Mr. Mayor, Council Member. Have a great night, everybody.
Next individual signed up this evening is Mr. Thomas Herndon. Again, name and address for the record, please.
Thomas Herndon, 311 Madrid Drive. I am actually just here, just wanted to be able to vocalize that my wife and I and our neighbors are just very disappointed in the trash pickup in the alleyway going away. We just feel like that's one of the things that has set Universal City apart from a lot of other neighborhoods and subdivisions and areas. And that's one of the things that we love about the fact that we get to walk around our neighborhood. You know, my wife and I take walks on a regular basis and walk up and down the streets and enjoy seeing neighbors and walking up and down and seeing the beautiful streets. And the fact that we can have potentially trash being left out or knocked over and things getting a lot messier, I just feel like is going to deteriorate just the natural ability, the beauty of the streets that we have. So I do also think there's a lot of issues that we have that we're not thinking about with elderly people. And I think that whatever can be done, I just urge the council to reconsider, to go back to the negotiating table and just to try and see what we can do to try and make some sort of compromise to make it work, so that's it.
Just for a matter of record for all of you out there, that this will be an item of discussion at the next council meeting. So that was brought up by Mr. Maxwell, and the consensus of the council was to bring it back up for discussion at this particular point. So on March 15th meeting, we'll be talking about this particular issue.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address council that did not have a chance to fill out the form? Okay, very good. Let's move on then to our next item. Thank you all for your participation this evening. It is very invaluable to us to get the input from our citizens. We really appreciate it. Okay, the next item then is this first one. Tab number B, discuss and to consider resolution 934-2022. It's a resolution authorizing the project at 1732 Universal City Boulevard, which will facilitate the promotion and development of new or expanded commercial development, and which was approved by the Board of Directors of Universal City Economic Development Corporation on 10 February 2022, and proving an effective date, providing an effective date, and that is the first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go ahead and give a brief introduction, and then Kristen's going to give an overview, and then also we have the applicants available as well. So as you know, the Economic Development Corporation has been doing a lot of work to try to provide tenancy for some of our vacant buildings. One of the items in particular that they like to work on are called capital improvements, meaning improvements that are made to the building that stay with the building should someone else vacate the premise. And in this particular project, we are working on a fire suppression system. With a building that's 100,000 square feet, they are required to have a fire suppression system. This is the second building ever built in North Lake, and the existing fire suppression system is inadequate for future tenants. So the Economic Development Board did hear the discussions that Kristen's going to present in a few minutes, and the recommendation to the City Council was that you approve the expenditure of the reimbursement of the $500,000, reminding you that the EDC never gives money up front. That's why we have a contract. That's why they have to get a certificate of occupancy, because we don't actually give them any money up front. It's all done on a reimbursement basis. So if they don't finish the project, they don't get the money. I'll let Kristen take it from there.
Thank you, Mayor. So as Kim said, Miss Cindy Cohn and Scott Klingler, they're back in the corner, are going to be the future owners of the property 1732 Universal City Boulevard. It's zone C4. Cindy has worked as a commercial real estate agent for 30 plus years, and she started when she was 10. In addition, her and Scott own MergeWorks. It's an ancillary office furniture company currently in Windcrest. They have about 18,000 square feet and 30 full-time employees that they're looking to bring over to Universal City into that building. They're wanting to occupy MergeWorks, the first 40,000 square feet of the building, and then multi-tenant out the remaining 60. That building has sit empty since BTI left and moved their headquarters out of state. They've had 2 or 3 employees doing cleanup, but it's been empty since December of 2020. Cindy, in her due diligence, found some deferred maintenance in the building that they would need to take care of in order to make it an attractive investment for her and for future tenants. The list of the scope of project is included in your packet. Some of the things that she's going to have to do to the building is her tenant improvements for MergeWorks to move over, as well as make that spec space ready for other companies to move in. At this time, she doesn't have prospective tenants, but by upgrading the fire suppression system to allow for high stack, that will allow greater amount of tenants. Open up the window to allow tenants that can high stack. So it just gives her greater opportunity to bring in somebody. There's current code violations. She is needing to expand the parking lot to make it bigger to house those tenants in the back, and do some pop outs to have some glass back there just to show storefront. She's wanting to split the electrical meters to have each tenant on their own meters. add dock doors in that back, so they can also have the warehouse space, the way that Super Doors was designed. The docks are all in the front, so those future tenants will need those as well. The roof is in poor condition and will need to be replaced. And then, of course, paint and miscellaneous code things that need to be brought up to code. That investment is about $2.6 million in addition to the purchase of the property. By the time she gets all that done, they'll be looking to invest about $11 million into this building. At the EDC meeting, the projects that the EDC likes to fund, which you all know, are projects that stay permanently with the building. So after much discussion, they voted to assist Ms. Cohn with the fire suppression system, which would stay there, as well as splitting the meters to individually meter those extra tenants. And so whether or not Cindy stays or not is an upgrade to the building. It will stay there. If you guys have any questions about the project, Cindy is here to help answer those as well.
Thank you, Mayor, and I might add that our two city council members who sit on the EDC are not here this evening, so Kristen and I will do our best to represent the discussion that they have amongst themselves.
Okay. All right, Council. First of all, welcome the motion and then we'll go to discussion.
Move approval. Second.
Shelby, motion second by Councilor Maxwell. Let's open it up now for discussion. Any specific questions of Ms. Turner?
Or Ms. Cohen, if you'd like to hear from her.
Pardon?
If you want to hear from the applicant, she's here also.
Absolutely, ma'am. Please come on up.
Sure.
Why don't you, before we bring some questions up, let's hear from you.
Okay. I would like to, well, first of all, thank you guys for having us here. Excuse me, as Kristen and Kim said, my husband and I will be purchasing the building, and then we'll be bringing our manufacturing business to the building. Listening to some of the concerns of the citizens, I totally understand that they are concerned about what will we do with this money. I would like to make clear that, as Kim said, the money that the Economic Development Council is assisting us with, reimbursing us, will really increase the value of this building. Right now, the building is vacant. It has been vacant, as you heard, for over a year. It's currently constructed for one tenant. If one tenant were to come in here and lease that building, they might bring 20, 30 employees, but they're not going to bring more employees than we're going to bring. And we're only going to occupy a third of that building, which means that by us multi-tenanting that building and bringing in potentially either one or two or three more tenants, we could conceivably, once we find these tenants, and I don't know who they are, so I can't obviously tell you, I'm bringing in 50 more employees of the building. But conceivably, if you just use our 30 employees and extrapolate that to 102,000 square feet, it could be as many as 90 new employees coming into that building, spending tax dollars in the city, helping improve the value of that building, going to lunch, frequenting the businesses, etc. So we feel it's a great investment for the building. I don't know if I answered all your questions, but I'm here if you've got more.
Good, thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
Okay, any specific questions of Kim or Lieutenant? Yes, Mr. Maxwell.
Ma'am, you're moving from Windcrest. Are you actually relocating the facility or just branching out?
We are relocating the facility completely.
So
Yes, sir.
Windcrest lost
Yes,
the
sir.
gate.
Yes, sir.
One other thing. Did I hear correctly, you're investing approximately $11 million in the entire process?
When all is said and done, it could be north of that, it could be slightly shy of that, but yes, that's the current budget estimate.
Significant amount of change.
Yes,
I just
sir.
want to make a statement. This is not really for you, it's for the audience, but based on some of the questions that were raised. This improvement this is vetted out through many processes. There's not a contract per se where we go through and identify each line item. This is a contract where by certificate of occupancy, they have to be able to move in and be ready for business or it's a no-go. And it's a reimbursement, a refund of services that need to be updated for a facility that is useless without that. They cannot use it, it does not meet codes. And so it's a reimbursement of those. From my perspective, city monies that is well spent for the city, it stays in the city and promotes the city for future, just that. And with that, I'll just end that.
Jerry?
It's for the city,
Yes, sir.
and just need to break in if I'm wrong on any of this. I'm just, out of everything I've heard and what I've read, again, looking at what's on here to bring things up to code and move in and just the projects on a building alone, bad roof, everything else. I see that, you know, the total there of the $2,669,000. And if they decide they put those improvements in there, decide to take off and just drop everything, they wouldn't get the $500,000.
Correct. So once the certificate of occupancy is received, meaning if they've completed all of the improvements, then what they do is they send us the receipts or give us a tabulation of everything that they have spent on the building. Once we verify that, and for the larger contractors, like the general contractor, we verify that the contractor has been paid in full, and then at that time, the reimbursement is given, but not until all of that happens.
Correct, and so this is also for the audience here too. Since these things aren't taken lightly, this is an investment in a very big building that you know is vacant. If they decide to take off, that those improvements are done, and they're not getting any money. And I would love to see a total of $11 million go in there. I don't see them taking off anywhere. I just see this as a win-win. We were talking about not being any, there was some questions raised about not putting any stipulations on where that money goes. But with this type of contract, I'm not sure that has to specifically be stipulated. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Sheldon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we know what the value of this building currently is? I meant to bring it with me, and BCAD site is down right now, so I can't actually look what the property value is as far as tax valuations.
Okay, so there's market value and then there's taxable value.
I'm thinking taxable value. Do we know?
So I do not know, but I'm guessing you may.
Sorry.
It was in the original packet. Okay. It is.
Yeah, on the
Hold up
spot.
your hands. Hold them higher, Kristen.
I think it was 6 million.
6
Yeah,
million.
Yeah, a little over 6 million.
So,
I was gonna say something about that, so.
okay, so the city is reimbursing a small portion of $500,000 into a building that's already worth $6 million. Excuse me, the EBC. Thank you. I'm talking.
Understand.
So, we're investing, and I'm seeing any type of property of real value, real estate property. When you put money into it, the value goes up.
Yes, sir.
So we will see an increase in ad valorem because of the value of the building going up, and because it's been empty for how long again?
Since December of
2 years.
I imagine an empty building slowly decreases in value over time. So we are.
And an unused building also becomes quickly dilapidated. So you still need to run the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
Things still need to be used and operated on. And the longer it goes, the more expensive it is to bring it up to date.
And in particular, a building that's not in code.
Right.
So all of these things are lowering the value each year, that we don't help somebody invest in improving the building.
Reinvestment in the community is always paramount.
And another role of the Economic Development Corporation is also to bring businesses in, not just expand and improve the building that we have. So we're kind of have a twofer with this one.
And I saw we just did this recently with another business here in Universal City, where we took a very old, dilapidated building and turned it into something amazing.
That is correct. I believe you're talking about what used to be the bunker and is now called Gatlinburg.
That is correct.
Much better, yes. But
And
also has a very good impact on the city.
And if they, for some reason, were to leave, we have a building that's been improved that somebody else can then come back into and take advantage of.
That is correct. And they probably put in about the same amount in that small building that she's putting in this larger building. So we're talking single tenant versus multi-tenant.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And I might also add, as a form of just advising everyone. So, as Kristen said, the purpose for the Economic Development Corporation is to expand existing businesses and to reinvest in the commercial district. Their funding cannot be used in any way for what we would call community development. In other words, it cannot be used in residential areas. It can only be used for commercial districts and commercial type enterprises. And the type of program that we're talking about tonight, I realize for some it is the first time you've heard it, but the EDC has been doing this for almost 25 years. So if it seems like we're a little bit nonchalant about it, it's because we've done it numerous times, which is how we got HEB, which is how we got Planet Fitness, which is how we got Sonic, which is how we got a lot of businesses in the city, was through programs just like this one that the EDC has done.
And it's true to say that pretty much every business that's in North Lake Business Park has benefited from the EDC.
Every business that is in the North Lake has either bought their property from the EDC, had some kind of contract with the EDC to revitalize a building, or the roads that they drive on and the landscape islands that they have are all the reinvestment that the EDC has done in the North Lake area since 1998.
Thank you very much.
We also, for the audience's edification, there is no taxpayer money involved with this whatsoever. Okay, none, zero. Okay, so I'm sure you understand that.
Property tax.
Well, property, yeah, but not property taxes. Okay, so any other discussion on that? All right, let's call for the vote then.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Councilmember Maxwell?
Aye.
Councilmember Nazarian?
Aye.
Councilmember Foley?
Aye.
The motion passes. This is our first reading. Again, if there's something that comes up that we think is of critical importance, it's going to be presented at our next council meeting as well. So thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, I'm going to ask for a quick 5-minute break here because I want to discuss something with the city manager real quick, and we'll be right back. So see you in 5 minutes.
So worry about this.
That we have an individual that has come this evening who is definitely related to, in terms of the airmen that we recognize this evening. Her name is Mary Eddy. And Mary was a member of one of our committees for a long time. No longer is a member of that park and rec, but she still does everything for us. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank her and recognize her for her special service that she does to Universal City. And we are so proud, and there's a little special gesture that we'd like to give to you to recognize you for all you did. With JDSA Randolph to get those airmen, and they were a record number, I think, this time, Mary. She's the one that's been responsible for all of this. And this is a small token, but we just want to say thank you so very much for what you always do. And it's just a great pleasure to have you as our community. So thank you very much. Already gone. I think the last time we had the Snowfest, 100% of them were gone to the next assignment before we had a chance to recognize them. I think there are a few still here, but
and they'll get them. We're going to send them.
Okay, good. Oh, thanks, Mary.
Right there.
One more thing. Yes. Do you have them?
I do, yeah, I just
Oh,
couldn't
yeah,
figure
yeah.
out where they are. Yeah. And this deco that was almost perfect. Her grandson's also here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Riley Bonnet, Aiden Zouazwa, and Michael Zouazwa. So, there you go.
Brought all the neighbors out.
Wow, what a pleasure to be able to do that. Okay, our next item this evening is tab number C, to present and discuss concept plan for Ironwood Apartments at 1950 Universal City Blvd.
Mayor, thank you. As you know, we've had several developers come with the concept of apartments wanting to do a public facility corporation. And a public facility corporation is where a city would partner with that developer in order to have the facility constructed to the point that it was reached, because of the city's participation, it would receive 100% tax abatement. Well, let me back up, approximately 100%, because there are nuances in there that it makes it so it's not actually 100%. With that said, one of the things that we've been doing is trying to identify what kind of an impact that would have on our existing apartment housing stocks. Because as you know, the further down you go on Pat River Road, the older the housing becomes. Some of it actually was a hotel at one point in the early 50s, and it's now become an apartment complex. And so we're trying to understand, like we did on 1732 Pat River Road, how do we identify reinvestment into the existing housing stock, and is perhaps a public facility corporation for Universal City better suited to an existing complex so that we can reinvest and revitalize in the properties that we have here? So with that, we've had a chance to work with Tim Palmquist on the concept of the public facility. He is with Trident Realty, and they are the owners of the Ironwood Apartment Complex, which the address is 1950 Universal City Boulevard. They have frontage on Kitty Hawk and on Universal City Boulevard, so they are very adjacent to Walmart and all of the emerging economic development that will be happening along Kitty Hawk Road at some point, and then down all the way down and around on Route 1604. So what we asked him to do was to come and kind of present the PFC concept from an existing apartment perspective, and talk about the challenges of a older, less modern apartment complex and how they go about competing in the apartment market at this time. So with that, I'm going to introduce Tim Palmquist. You'll find him to be very, well, I don't want to toot your horn too much. He's very, very qualified, has a long relationship in apartments, started out, I guess, in management, and then became a developer. He's a finance guy, and so not only has he does well on his Ironwood Apartments and how he manages it, but he does a very good job of working with the city staff in terms of keeping the building up to code as much as financially possible. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Tim Holmquist. I represent Ironwood Apartments.
Can you speak up to make sure the people in the back can hear you?
Yeah, 1950 Universal City Boulevard. We identified this asset in 2015 and closed in early 2016. During our 6 years of ownership, we worked closely with Universal City and have been committed to improve the asset and to raise the quality of life for our tenants and benefit the existing community. As a result of these improvements we've made over the last 6 years, we've been able to reduce the initial double-digit economic loss, which was bad debt and vacancy. And this has been a benefit to both our residents, who now see this apartment community as their community, and also we believe it's a value to the overall community of Universal City. Our particular asset is a mid-1980 asset, as many of the other assets immediately surrounding us are. To date, we have invested $1.7 million in capital improvements. Our initial CapEx budget through escrow was just shy of $1 million. So that's left us with about $700,000 to be funded out of cash flow, which means that just reduces our return to basically a low single digit. Our desire is to continue to revitalize the property, improving this existing housing stock, raise the quality of life for our tenants, and which again we think will benefit the community. While we have been able to generate positive rent growth based on the improvements done to date, we're still, quite frankly, being outpaced by rises in the cost of insurance, especially with the Valentine's Day storm. We've seen that double in the last 3 years, and property taxes we've seen go up 30% in the last 24 months. So our challenge is a need to stay competitive with the surrounding apartment community while still continuing to improve the property and managing these rising costs. That's the challenge. As a representative of this mid-1980 vintage, I'm concerned about the possibility of a new apartment asset being selected as a participant in a PFC. Simply, and not to go too deep in the woods, but just for a minute, let me digress. Typically, if you have Class B or C, whatever you want to call 1980s asset, and it's a competitive market, we look forward to the fact that new stock will be introduced because we know new housing projects will have higher costs of construction, they'll have higher property taxes, they'll have higher insurance, and they will be an asset class to somebody who appreciates that, can afford that, and wants to live and have a better, higher quality of life. But there's always a spread or a margin that we depend on between the Class A apartments and the Class B and Class C. And regardless if the economy is going up and rents are going up, or the economy is going down and rents are going down, that spread always pretty much stays the same. And sometimes we see it expand where the Class A is so new that the existing stock suffers a little bit, but we seldom see that spread compress. But typically it stays pretty constant. And while it's hard to give an exact dollar amount per individual markets, I would say in this market that's probably a spread of about $300, maybe a little bit more, would be what we would see between the Class A and Class C. For consideration, if a PFC structure was made to a new Class A, and let's say they provide 300 units, and let's say the tax savings to them is $1.5 million a year, and maybe they don't net all of that, maybe it's $1.2 million or slightly less, but you've got 300 units, there's a savings of $1.2 million. Divide that by 300 units by 12 months, that's going to be about $312 a month that the Class A would have a competitive advantage, which would put it head-to-head with your existing stock here in the community, making it super challenging for the owners of existing housing stock to continue to improve their property and stay competitive with the rent structure, hoping to stay that $300 below the Class A. But if the Class A is a beneficiary of the PFC, then that makes it tough for the existing housing stock. However, my thought process is that if that PFC structure were made to the existing housing stock, we could revitalize the existing housing stock. This would be true redevelopment. We would reinvest in the communities. We would bring up the existing property, and it would be better quality of life to our existing residents within the city. Right? So my ask tonight, and I can't think of a better property to start with, is your pilot project in Ironwood Apartments. Just in conclusion, I would ask for your consideration that you would look at a PFC structure that could benefit an apartment such as ours. We have a track record of spending each and every year, in excess of 6 figures every year, above and beyond to do, if it's underpinning, if it's removing railroad ties, if it's whatever the issues are. We have a track record of reinvesting in our asset, and we would welcome the opportunity to be a beneficiary of the PFC program.
Before we proceed, let me explain to the audience here. We started this concept some months ago where potential activity could happen if warranted, where developments could come to us, or like in this case, the apartment complex could come to the city and get our feeling. What is our overall feeling about the potential of this before they even proceed any farther? So this has been our opportunity for them as well, for us to get a feel for what they would like to accomplish, and then council can take a look at it and give them some comments, and then they will make the decision whether they're going to go forward with the next step in the process, which would be go before a planning and zoning commission. So just want to make sure you're aware of those. That's why we're doing this. I think it's been extremely beneficial to the potential folks that have approached council, because we've given you some pretty good guidance, I think. And hopefully this evening we'll be able to provide that same to you. So let me open it up for anybody. Again, this is our just discussion. There's no action. It's just a discussion item. So anybody want to bring something up with that?
No, you go ahead.
Tom?
Is this is just a kind of a rehash of some of the other CFPs that we've discussed?
So the PFCs that were brought before City Council had to do with new development.
Understand.
So yeah, the main difference is this is an existing one. So through Denton, Navarro, Rocha, Bernal, Jack, we were able, they handle, let me back up. So as a law firm, they actually handle apartment complexes for the San Antonio Housing Trust, which does a lot of PFCs. So they have some more experience and background in this than the city does. The other thing that the law firm was able to do was to put us with a financial person who specifically runs numbers for public facility corporations and provides consultation to cities and city councils on how to best structure a deal so that there is a definite economic benefit for whatever city they happen to be in. And they don't work on the developer side, they only work on the city side, so that's very advantageous. In our discussion with him regarding PFCs as it relates to new apartment complex, obviously we're still learning a lot, still doing a lot of due diligence. One of the things that we did ask he and our legal counsel was, well, the concept is interesting, and I understand generally why new developers need it so that they can afford to, put out $55 to $65 million, which is a lot of money. And I understand the tax advantage for them because then it reduces their overhead costs on a monthly basis for a long period of time. So our general discussion with them was, well, if the concept is available for new apartments, should it not be available for existing apartments? Because that's really where the reinvestment and the economic revitalization needs to come in, not just through new development. So in our conversations with them, they did advise us that yes, the state law is written in such a way that the PFC concept can be attributed to existing apartment complexes for improvements and things of the nature. So it would basically work the same way. Would it be for 75 years like on a new development? Probably not, because we know they're closer to the end of their life. And as it's been explained to us, sometimes working with a new apartment complex is actually a better benefit for the city, not only for the revitalization and the reinvestment, because when the investment goes in, it gives the PFC and the owner the ability to raise the rates, which means you're bringing in people with a higher expendable income and all the things that go with it, just like you do when a house sells, you would hope that somebody would make an investment in. The other thing that he explained to us is that the PFC concept can be set up for a shorter period of time. It can also be set up in such a way that the city really is not losing any of the tax advantages that the city gets on taxable property. Without going into too much detail, that's what he recommends to his clients. So we thought it was fair for the council, since we've had other presentations, that you hear the other side of the coin, and that is from the existing. So we have a lot of existing housing stock, as Mr. Palmquist had mentioned, in the late 70s, early 80s, that for most of them, and it's being the exception because he's making an investment in them, their rent rates are going down. When we attend conferences where we get demographers in the room and they're talking about where people live that go to the schools and where they pay rent, and you have Universal City has some of the lowest apartment rents in the Metrocom area, and they feel that if we would bring our apartment complex up to a better quality, that perhaps the rent rate could go up, which means the value would go up, which means the benefit of the school would be there as well. So that's the general discussion, and that's why we brought it before you today.
Thank you. With that being said, Tom, you want to continue? I want to continue. I think you answered the question thoroughly. Apartment complexes being a business, would they qualify for EDC reimbursements?
So they are considered, multifamily is considered commercial in terms of construction, and it is for water accounts, it is for waste accounts, but I don't believe that it is a project that would be to the EDC. Because first of all, the EDC doesn't receive ad valorem tax. And so I'm going to say it probably falls in the same category as a church. We don't really consider them commercial.
Okay, with that being said, opinion. I think the as an apartment complex management is a business. You have a business plan, you take a long-term business plan, and you forecast future interest required. I don't see the city business needing to get into real estate at this point in time. That's just my personal opinion.
Again, this is feedback we're giving to the individuals who received. Mr. Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What changed in the taxes? Because in the past, we were talking about basically the property becomes a publicly owned property and therefore it's not taxed.
At the end of okay, so simply by the city being affiliated with the property, they are able to get 100% tax abatement, and that tax abatement goes towards reduced rents or capital improvement projects in the future. But the same concept applies for a PFC, but obviously because their valuation is less because they're older, the amount of tax benefit that they would get from that would be less. But the benefit of working with an existing complex versus a new one is that you can structure it so that any savings that they get from not paying property tax would be reinvested back into the property, which would probably extend the life of the property and the ability for them to provide housing at a marketable rate.
So, and I have to ask, like, that benefits the city of Universal City, but thankfully BCAD's got their website fixed. The valuation last year on that property was $8 million, $8.5 roughly, and they paid about $107,000 to Judson ISD and $49,000 to the city of Universal City. That will go away. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, the tax portion of it would go away to the individual entities, but for the city, it would be reinvested back into the property, and as the city being a partner in the PFC, we would reap some of the benefit from the rental rates and things of that, which would come pretty close to making up the city's portion.
Which is great for us, but not so much for the schools.
Well, actually, that's not true either.
Okay.
So some people may have forgot about Texas has the is a Robin Hood state. So when the schools receive their taxes, even though, let's say this one is in Judson, the money doesn't go to the Judson School District. It goes into the state and it's divvied up to all of the school districts based on their per day attendance. So if the school is at 95% attendance for this month, they get a certain amount per child for that 95 percentile. If, let's say, the Judson School District, their per cap per child was $5,000, and the property taxes from this area brought in a head count of 10,000 per child, then Judson would lose $5,000, and it would be redistributed to other school districts. The other thing that we have learned is that when there is a shortfall on the school districts and the taxes that they have brought in, the state actually makes up that difference in other forms to make sure that they still have the per capita head per child. So it would not directly affect the school districts in this area.
And then, so my last question is, this is still a 75-year,
Not from the south side, it's coming
no,
from
so
No.
what makes this, how does this, because it becomes, the property becomes owned by the PSC, which is managed by the city of Universal City.
Well, yeah, we are a partner of the PSC, that is correct. So the way the PSCs work, and you are correct, at the end of whatever that life term is, normally for new apartments it's 75 years, probably for an older apartment it's going to be a lot less. So I know you think, oh, the city's not in the business of running the apartment. Remember, we wouldn't be running the apartment, we would just be a partner in it and receiving some of the benefit from it. But at the end, when the apartment the PFC has gone away, let's say it's 30 years, it can either go back out on the market and somebody else can pick it back up, or the city owns a very strategically placed piece of property that could be used for retail or other types of commercial, or it can be torn down and put in a Class A apartment. So it has multiple means when the property becomes in the hand of the city. And I'll liken that to other properties that we have bought, in ours, the 1604 property, that the EDC bought out on Loop 1604, and then the city bought the property right behind it. It's an investment we made, right? We bought the property so that we could have some control over the development and the use of it. And so for a PFC at its end of the life, it still has that value to the city. It's our asset, and we have the ability to do away with apartments, to keep the apartments, to turn it into something else, or to tear it down and sell it, or tear it down and have somebody else build something.
But we expect it, and I'm sorry, this is just a follow-up on that. We expect to see, when it becomes matures, right, we expect there's going to be cost to the city at that point.
Absolutely. So in discussion with the finance guru, he indicated yes, and that a lot of what the city would be doing is a portion of the revenue that they would be receiving from the PFC and the rent rates and things of that nature, that some of that would be put aside so that when the property needed to be torn down or developed, you would already have that in place. Again, it's just about planning long-term rather than worrying about the here and the now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Mr. Adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I read this, and I mean, there wasn't much on there to read. When I saw PFC, we've gone through this before, and it wasn't very well accepted by this council and the projects that were brought up. So when I first read it, I was like, but then I was also thinking, it's already here. And you bring up some very good points, Mr. Palmquist and the city. This is an existing property that's an integral part of Universal City. Yeah, I'm not into the 75 years, but it looks like if this was done to an existing property, bringing up the value of that property, you said the tax savings could be reinvested. I don't know if it's reinvested into the property. I'm not sure if that's something that has to be done or something that's discussed. You know, there's a few changes. What was brought before this council before on properties that new properties, I didn't agree with it. I didn't think it was a good fit personally for the city. This gives me a different idea. It's an interesting concept with it already being here. I'm not saying yay or nay on it as far as I'm concerned, but I think it's something that is together and finding out the I's dotted and the T's crossed in exactly how many years. Yeah, 75 years, 50 years, 30 years. We don't know that. We don't know exactly what type of improvements. Is it going to be aesthetic? Is it going to be all different? And down the line, you brought up a very good point. It ends up, again, being in a very integral part of Universal City. Do we end up down the line as a city owning this property, being able to do something the same, keeping it as it is, or something different? I think that's, as we're talking about the future of the city, I think that, again, I'm not saying I'm for or against, but I'm thinking this is something that we need to take a look at deeper as far as the possibility for the city.
Right, and the staff is not necessarily pro or against PSCs. It's just the concept keeps coming up, right? It comes up all the time. Every time a developer calls, well, will the city do a PSC? Because they are happening all over the state. And so that's why we are going through our educational process, and that's why we're kind of letting the council hear some about it as well. Because, you know, it's going to keep coming up, and the question is we have to kind of, at some point, going to have to decide along the way. And I'm sure we'll have a workshop to have all this hammered out. What are our general feelings about it? What are our understanding about it? And what is the impact on the community, whether it's new or existing? And which one would benefit us the most if we did decide to do it?
We're learning a lot more about the
Yes,
PSC
we
than
are
we did
as well.
when we initially started.
And just a follow-up question, Mr. Palmquist, can you give like just a quick synopsis as far as what's in your head, as far as what would be on your list of things of improvements, just off the top of your head, like we're talking about regular improvements, structural improvements, aesthetic, all the above, just
Yeah, no, absolutely. So definitely since the time we bought it, when we first bought it, we had our engineer, Mr. Mike Couch, identified one building that needed underpinning. We did that building. Since that time, there's been two more that we've done. Those, by the time you do the underpin and replace all the sewer lines under the building, that's about $250,000 a building. So that's been, that's a big initiative for us. In addition to that, we have railroad ties throughout the entire property that are in various states of disrepair and failing. So I think the one that's obvious that we did along Universal City Boulevard already, in front of our longest building, right, came out really nice. There's some places within the property that is also needed from a structural perspective. So call that aesthetic, call it structure. It's kind of both. And then my hope and desire has always been to landscape the property really well, because I think we have such a great corner there. Unfortunately, between the underpins and then the stair assemblies, of course, are separate structures, so they have to be lifted and reattached to the buildings and things of that nature. So we've had our fair share of between the underpinnings for the foundations and the retaining walls, and they kind of go in tandem a little bit. That gets 7 figures pretty quickly. And then, so, and, you know, that has to be a priority, because the quicker we address that, it's the integrity of the sewer lines that we're trying to protect. Then we like to take a step back, and we'd love to do the parking. Our tenants have put up with some pretty bad parking. We'd love to do that really well, and then, of course, all in preparation for landscape, which was my hope and dream when we acquired the asset. We just had things get in front of the landscape.
And what about the upgrades inside the units themselves, which is also what a tenant looks for?
Yeah, so we, in our team meetings right now, when we talk about what units become available, we always, what we try and do right now is take the absolute worst unit and make it the best unit. And so we're always trying to improve our stock. And that has a whole bunch of things. We're getting rid of carpet, all carpet in some of the units, so there's health considerations there. We've been bringing in some flat panels that are 1 foot by 4 foot LED lights, and the 4,000 lumens. Put a rheostat on it. That's probably the thing that's made the tenants the most happy, is that these units, older units, can be a little dark. We have 8-foot ceilings. The new Class A are super bright. They've got the 9-foot ceilings. They've got all the can lights. We've got 2 lights. But by bringing in the LED lights, these are the type of things that improve the quality of life, which is what we're, you know, We always want to make it a place that we'd be proud to live at ourselves, and that is our goal, and that's how we approach it. So we're always trying to improve the quality of the interiors, but it's a balance. Right now, the exterior is definitely needing some attention.
Thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Okay, we're looking at the option here of giving you some, not guidance, but some comments about how you may want to proceed, and that's your decision down the road, where you want to go from here. So Beverly, did you have a comment?
Briefly, how and who would determine how many years project would be?
How many years? Well, there's a couple of things. One is there is the financing mechanism, which is done by the developer, and that means that they would have to go to the bank, much like on 1732, they identified the list of everything, and then what is that loan going to be? So that needs to be spread out, let's say 20 to 30 years. And then there is the investment that they need to recoup on the property that they bought. And so that might take a few more years. So the other thing that adds into that is the taxing district, which in this case is the Bear County appraisal. How long are they willing to go out? They do have a say in that as well. And so I want to just stress one more thing. When the PFC happens, in particular with an existing apartment complex, financially it has to work for the city, and financially it has to work for them. So even on their end, they still need to go back and figure out all the ins and the outs of the financing and the terms and the length of the loan, etc., to make sure that it can work for them. If it doesn't work for them, then obviously they'll sell or move on, or somebody else will come in. But if the PFC does work for them and then works for the city, then we might decide to get married. But they still got a lot of due diligence on their end to understand the financing mechanisms.
Good. Again, you're getting some direction, not direction, but discussion from us, and so now you need to make your decision on do you want to proceed and what you would like to do. And so this is the feedback we've been giving you this evening, and hopefully that's been helpful for you. So as your company makes the decision on where you want to go from here, the next step is up to you.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Proceed. Okay, let's move on to tab number D then. Consider bid acceptance for the 2022 Olympia Sanitary Sewer Pipe Bursting Project. Emergency work. Randy?
Mayor, Council, before you have our project for this year, it's the Olympia Sanitary Sewer Pipe Bursting Project. I got it classified as an emergency project for us. It's to replace 780 linear feet of sewer line with HDP pipe that will be pipe bursting over from Capricorn through Thebes, through the properties that you'll see on the map there, all the way to Athenian. We did put this out to bid and received 5 bids. The low bid was received in the amount of $127,810 by Horseshoe Construction, which has done work for us in the past several years ago. So we are recommending approval in that amount of $127,810 to Horseshoe Construction Incorporated. Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How old is the existing line?
Existing line, the age of it is well over 40 years old in that area there. This one, the reason why it's an emergency is because we have a great trough, but no roof. The actual line is actually collapsed from the top, so we're just looking at nothing but earth when you go in there. So we've had several backups in that area, but once we put our televised in there, the line is pretty much deteriorated through there.
Okay, and the process of pipe bursting the existing line and how the lateral all connect to the new line.
So what we do, and we've done several of these throughout the city, they will come in and they'll dig an open, like each end at the manhole, like say Capricorn, and then at the alleys, every time we make a bend, they'll have an open hole there. And so it's a HDP fused pipe that they will pull in with a cable, and it will pipe burst out the old and slide in the new. And before they even put the connection points, they'll actually televise the line ahead of time, mark them, and then they come back and they'll dig those particular laterals to reconnect them.
Okay, so there's nothing involved on the citizens whatsoever?
Nothing at all, other than us notifying them to gain access, because as you can see, it runs through several yards, in the backyards and side yards.
And I'm assuming while you're doing this, you're going to recommend that they don't use water or anything? like person tonight?
Yes, it'll be minimized that we let them know, because we'll let them know at what times they'll be doing it. But they do set it up where the residents can use it, so no one is without water.
And what are we expecting the lifetime of what we're putting in?
The ACP is a good 80, 100 years. Easy.
Thank you.
On all these bids too, how long is this project expected to take?
This one here we did for 45 days.
45 days, and all these bids, are they all within that 45?
Yes, everyone. They all bid the same line items and the amount of time.
Yeah, I can see that. As far as the amount of time, so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we go ahead and entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Motion by Councilmember Maxwell.
Second.
Councilmember Shelby. Any other discussion on any of that? All right, call for the vote, please, Chris.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Gold.
Aye.
Okay, emergency needs to be done. Okay, move on to tab number E. Discuss and to consider ordinance 640-3-2022. It's an ordinance providing a second agreement to ordinance 650, establishing a program under Texas Local Government Code Chapter 380 to provide economic incentives to the Boulevard Development Company LC for the development, operations, and marketing of townhome suites by Marriott Hotel near the Olympia Hills Golf and Event Center, authorizing the city manager to execute the second amendment to the original associated hotel marketing agreement and providing an effective date. This will be our first reading. So Kim, would you want to explain it?
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, about 7 years ago, we tried working, we did an RFP for hotel developers on IH 35 on the property that used to be hole 14 at the golf course. And so during that process, we have, I'm going through a lot of detail because I realize that a lot of people don't know what happened in the past. So forgive me if this is old hat to you. So we did indicate the type of hotel that it needed to be. We had a developer that came forward that the city was confident with, that could complete the hotel and provide all of the amenities and everything that the city was going to require. They were pre-vetted by Marriott Corporation, which is always very reassuring for the city. So we did work with them. The city actually transferred the property to the Economic Development Corporation, and the Economic Development Corporation then began working with the hotelier. Along the way, obviously, there were a lot of agreements that had to be done, not just real estate agreements. We have our motel tax agreement, we have our marketing agreement, we have our development agreement, and we have our Chapter 380 agreement. So the one we're talking about tonight is just the Chapter 380 agreement. And then the EDC on March 10th will be looking at their development agreement. So the two areas now that the hotel is nearly complete that need to be modified in those is what we're here to discuss this evening. So the first one has to do with a change in amenities by Marriott. When we originally began working on this hotel, which obviously was pre-COVID and pre a lot of other things, Marriott allowed for their hotels to have hot tubs, some people call them spas. With the onset of COVID, they eliminated all hot tubs and spas from that hotel chain and a lot of other hotel chains because you have multiple people getting in and there's no social distancing. You've got a lot of body fluids and sweat and other things that happen in a spa. So they did away with that. So that was mid-construction, so we had discussions with the developers of what other amenities could they put in to still provide a good hotel stay experience. And so we compromised with them. We did get rid of the spa. We increased significantly the amount of area that they had to put in around the pool so that more people could use it and be distanced if they needed to be. And then we also had them install fire pits. So when people are out at night, not necessarily by the pool during the day, but they can be out in the back at night, and so they've installed the fire pits. So what we're asking for in this particular section is to remove the requirement for the 10-person spa and accept the expanded deck and the fire pits as an alternative for that. And people probably wondering, well, if they've already done it, why are we doing it? Because at some point, somewhere along the way, somebody's going to pick up these contracts and want to know why there's no spa at the hotel. So we're trying to clean everything up so that future generations, when they look at this contract, they should be able to follow the paper trail of what happened and why. The second thing that is really more of a clarification of a term. So we knew all along that this Marriott Town Place Suite was going to be an extended stay. And so extended stay basically means that they have a refrigerator, they have what they call a hot top, which is like a little two-person stove. They also have a dishwasher and a microwave, and then they have a fully stocked bar and food products in the room themselves. Plus, whoever is staying there can bring in their own food and cook it there if they need to be there for a long time. So in the contract, it calls for room service, which is not typically what we would identify as room service. Some people, when they stay at a hotel that has true room service, that means they're picking up the phone, they're calling down to the concierge or to the kitchen, and they're ordering food from a menu, and it's brought up to their room. So in this particular case, room service is really the amenities that are in the room and the availability of them to go down to the snack bar, which is right next to the pool and the fire pits. And they can order food there, but nobody's going to deliver it to them. They have to take it in themselves. So we're asking to clarify in this what we mean by room service. So those are the two items that we're changing, and it's the same two items that will be in the EDC's development agreement on March 10th.
This is what is known as potential new normal, which we didn't know was existing a couple of years ago. So this clarifies some of the issues that were in the original agreement that we made with them. So I'll take a motion in a second, then we'll open it for discussion.
Move for approval.
Second. Second, Councilmember Adjournment. Okay. Discussion anymore? Any further? I think it's yes, Mr. Sheldon.
So just to clarify, I mean, we're literally just adjusting verbiage in an already existing.
In the room service verbiage and in the amenity section, just removing spa and adding the pool deck and the fire pit. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I understand that is, I understand why they've done that corporation-wide, for sure. No question. Anyone else? All right, and call for the vote, please, Chris.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Councilmember Maxwell?
Aye.
Councilmember Lloyd?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. I think you all understand that they're getting pretty close to completion. If you are not aware, it really is the only I-35 frontage property that we have in Universal City. Surprisingly, many people think we have a whole lot more, but we really don't. So this is going to be a tremendous asset for our community. Many potential marketing agreements between the city and the golf and event center. So it's getting near completion, and we're really excited about the potential in the future. So let's move on now. Again, we pulled tab number F, so we'll not be discussing this evening. So the next item is the no tab. We're going to go into a closed session pursuant to Texas Code, Government Code Section 551-072. It's regarding the purchase or value of real property, and deliberation in open session would have a detrimental effect on the position of the corporation in negotiations with a third party and for attorney consultation pursuant to Section 551-0712 regarding the 43 acres of vacant land located southwest of Universal City Blvd and northeast of East 410 North and southeast of Kitty Hawk Road. So we'll go into a session now, and we'll get back as quickly as we can. Thank you very much.
That's what I understand. That's why I can't
Reconvene from the session. It is now 9:43, or 8:43, excuse me. We'll reconvene from the closed session, and there'll be no action taken as a result of that session. Thank you for sticking around with us. We really appreciate it, but some discussions that we all needed to have. All right, let's move on then to, that closes our the business this evening, so now I'll turn it over to our city manager for our comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one thing, and you know, we had our snow fest, and everybody always wants to know how many people showed up and how did the event go.
So I've asked Randy to come and give you a brief presentation on Snowfest.
Mayor Council, I'm happy to say we had a very successful Snowfest event. As many years we've done it, I think it was our 13th year, and this by far was the biggest event that we've ever had. So if you were there, you saw the crowds, they were huge. So basically the attendance was a little over 8,500. If we add in all the volunteers, the merchants, the children under 2, if you add all that, we're close to
9,000.
Yeah, we're close to 9,000 in attendance there with everybody. So it was huge. There were things that this was last big event that we had was probably 3-4 years ago when we actually grew Snowfest a little bit bigger because we learned from that we need more. But this year from this event, we learned a little bit more that we got to do to make it even more successful. But we're happy to say everything was good out there, no big hiccups at all really, and but we still got some improvements to make, which we'll do based on the crowd like we had and stuff. So.
Well, let me publicly thank your team, Public Works, is absolutely phenomenal for what you guys did, and I also want to thank Regina Carmona, our special events coordinator, and the entire team that put this all together was just a phenomenal event. And if you had a chance to go, I know you recognized all the work that was done and how successful it was. And it puts a big feather in the hat of Universal City.
Well,
Thank you, Randy.
add one more thing, and we can't do it without the great staff that we have, because everybody in staff is working the event. Long day, very long day for everybody. But also I want to really thank our volunteers that we do, from the Air Force to Calvary Church to the Judson Jacob folks. We get a lot of volunteers that help us out.
I had some of my students that are really happy to participate.
Exactly.
Thanks, Randy. Kim, anything else?
That was it, he picked it up, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Randy. Okay, Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, this is getting a long night tonight. I see about half the audience whiskeyed out on us there. Anyway, I do appreciate you guys staying this far. Thank you for the input. 3 of our candidates gave some really good input tonight, and the other 2 that are candidates gave some really good input tonight also. It is public knowledge now that I have not put in for re-election, and that is my choice, and because I've been an advocate of new blood coming in. And we got 3 people that are vying for council, and I've always been an advocate for new folks coming in. And I step aside to watch, and I will be a volunteer on the side. Appreciate it. Thank you ever so much. And today is my first official day of retirement. You made me work.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
The voice
Been
of
around high.
The voice is being.
We can hear you. A hot mic. All right. I know we're going to do this, but I can't. I was at Snowfest all day, all the way to the end. I was there with somebody who was volunteering all the way to the end. I cannot even express my thanks to everybody who put blood, sweat, and tears into making that happen, and everybody who stayed after it was over. Oh my Lord, I cannot imagine how tired everybody was at the end of that. And yes, the lines were long, but I must have walked through that park 15, 20 times over the 6 hours I was there. Nobody was complaining. Everybody was patiently standing in line. I stood in long lines to get some food. The food was amazing. I also know we ran into some hiccups with, what we used to get for our rides, and the fact that we managed to find somebody to fill that need, even though we had fewer rides. My understanding, we have fewer rides than we've had in the past, which doesn't help with the lines, but we've made it happen, and so not me, not us, you guys made it happen. The Parks and Rec made it happen, and thank you to everybody who helped make it happen and who was there to make it work. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ditto on Snowfest, it was amazing. I didn't say the whole day, but it was just really wonderful. The next day I happened to drive by the park. It was clean. It's like nothing ever happened. and somebody didn't sleep a few nights.
Everybody from Public Works.
Sir?
Everybody from Public Works.
Oh.
Did not sleep that night.
Had to be finished. It was clean. I had some plumbing work done today, not too much. But as the plumber and I were talking, he mentioned Jacqueline, and he liked her. I think the firm that knows what you're doing is what's working, so I just wanted to pass that on, that the plumber liked her, and that's hard to do. Okay, that's all.
Thanks, Brandon. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, to our new city attorney, welcome, Megan Sante. It's a small city, but I think you're going to find it very fruitful. As for Snowfest, I was also there all day with good friends of mine from the Citizens Police Academy running around, and got some lost kids and a couple lost bags and everything, but all in all, it was very fantastic, and I did get to meet those young men and women, the airmen that came out to help, and I must be getting old. When I looked out there and I saw these kids, I figured they were ROTC from high school. And then when I said, well, they were in the Air Force, I'm like, oh, geez. But listening to them, being able to talk to a few of them, we are in very good hands. And I really do appreciate that and appreciate their help. Also, Marietti, of course. One other thing that's been kind of weighing on me a little bit, but Tom, you were going to be missed, and appreciate everything you've done for the city. We'll get into that later, but you will be missed. Social media. Social media is our friend. Social media is our enemy. There are things that go on there. Some full information, some misinformation. Some things that need to be heard, some things that don't, the comments after. It kind of wears on you. Sometimes to hear things, you know, in deep pockets. It's like I keep telling people, this is not New York City, this is Universal City, which we call our Mayberry. Everybody who sits on council, which I appreciate, anybody running, I really do appreciate that, because it's the love of the city and what you want to see the city in the future. And I'm just going to bring something I saw today as far as on that, about bringing your outrage and pitchforks in here, in my view, are uncalled for and inappropriate.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I don't remember seeing that. Did you see that?
Okay, I have just a couple of items. One, if you've seen it on our website or on some of the other social sites, it's about the CPS and what they've been doing. They've been investing some particular special time and funding to try to help alleviate some of the problems that we had, especially in the last couple of weeks, with power lines being, and of course my neighborhood clearly was infected, probably as bad as any in Universal City, but they are really conscientiously trying to take a look at, are there some ways they can fix some of the situations that we have. So you'll see more trucks out there, you'll see them trying to help remove limbs and unwanted things, and that's what caused the biggest problem, obviously, with the last ice storm that we had, is that the trees just got over the power lines and caused a lot of disruption and a lot of problems. So they are working very, very hard and diligently to try to fix, so we don't, if we can minimize the potential in the future. We don't know. Obviously, Mother Nature calls all the shots, so we don't. One thing I do want to read here, this came from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ. So addressed to me, this is a general compliance letter for a compliant investigation. Dear Mayor Williams, on January 14, 2022, Mr. Chris Friesenhahn of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, San Antonio Region Office conducted an investigation at the above referenced facility to evaluate compliance with applicable requirements for a public water supply. No violations are being alleged as a result of the investigation, and at this time, your public water supply continues to merit recognition as a superior system. Really nice letter to be able to read, Randy, and I want you to make sure you take this back to the gang, that makes that all happen. I'm so very proud
If you
of
don't want to hear how we got there, we'll bring Blake in for you and give you a 2-hour tutorial.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone, for sticking it out this evening. Sorry we had to leave for a short period of time, but it was important for us to do that. And thanks for coming, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. This meeting is now adjourned at 8:54. Thank you.
Yeah.
When I learned about that,
Go home and watch the president.